Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Discover Qonic webinar. Thanks for very much joining us here on LinkedIn if you're live, and if you're watching it back on repeat, thanks very much for taking the time to check us out. We've roughly an hour or so to cover a number of different topics, just to highlight what some of those might be and to guide you through our session. We have an agenda that covers effectively the history and what's unique about Qonic, our product. There's a live demo from my colleague Jacob, and then a dedicated opportunity for you to ask any questions or queries that you might have, and some options to cover some optional next steps as well. At any point, you're welcome to leave questions and queries in the live chat functionality within this LinkedIn webinar. Or if you're watching back on demand, feel free to add questions still. We can try and answer those. So to guide you through, as I say, those are the topics. A brief introduction from myself. My name's Aaron Perry. I joined Qonic last year after about a decade or so at a large architectural firm based in London, roughly about 500 people or so, where I led a digital design group. So I have a fair amount of experience of coordinating both design teams to deliver very complex projects on typically quite tight historical sites, as well as understanding exactly how we apply technology for delivering digital projects. I'm joined by my colleague Jacob de Sutter, who studied civil engineering at the University of Ghent in Belgium, and has since been active in kind of the BIM software industry, first joining Brixis, and then 3 years ago joining the Qonic team. Please, again, feel free to reach out to us, send us messages and questions in the chat, or you're welcome to contact afterwards as well. Okay, so who are we? Who is Qonic? Well, a little bit about our background. You may have come across us via your social medias or through various media articles about Qonic. So it's useful for us, I think, to just kind of take a step back and give a full introduction of what it is we're trying to achieve, why we get out of bed in the morning, and where we're heading in terms of direction. So I think one of the first things I could probably say is that Qonic is not exactly a startup, but more of a start through. What I mean by that is, in contrast to traditional startups, there's quite a few of us. So there's more than 40 of us actively working on delivering new technology in this AEC space. And that group of 40 people aren't brand new to this process. The vast majority of all of those people combined are hundreds of years worth of industry experience, whether that's having developed 3D modeling software tools in the past. Maybe some of you may remember Triforma, working on BIM products, external solid modeling tools, ACIS from Dassault. In 2010, a number of people within this business worked on the kind of push-pull concept that we accept so familiarly now. And many of them also coming across following the acquisition of Brixis, where they worked on BricsCAD BIM and BricsCAD. And that really gave, I think, the team here a real flying start in understanding exactly what the industry needs and how to make software that's very much in demand. So what makes us a little bit different? Well, and why are we doing this? We're building what the industry needs, and that doesn't happen overnight. I think it's important for me to say we're not in stealth, alpha, beta. We have a commercially available product, and we have paying customers for that product. We don't need another 4, 5, 6 years to make something useful for you. And as you'll see over the next part of the webinar, we think there's probably already at least a couple of things within Qonic that are extremely valuable to you right now. One thing I will say also, should this be useful to you, we have no external investment. We have no shareholders, we have no venture capitalist funds influencing or curtailing our roadmap. And this might be unique, maybe compared to some of the startups and competitors that we have in this space. Effectively, that enables us to move incredibly quickly, build and deliver with our partnering customers, without the restrictions of maximizing shareholder value or specifically adapting our roadmap with buzzwords that investors think make sense. And I would say, in terms of our mission and where we're heading, there is a long-standing, long-broken process where complex 3D modeling tools and design tools struggle to allow people to communicate through all these disconnected data managements and reporting solutions. And Qonic is really focused on transforming that chaotic translation, the data loss, the performance-driven restrictions into much more of an accurate, accessible, and fully synchronized stream of contact information. Now, we're extremely well placed to deliver this with our industry experience, and we're very much focused on building what the industry should probably have had 10 years ago, but bringing it to the market today. So let's talk about the Qonic product. The foundations of the Qonic product are pretty simple. The way we think about it internally is it's the fastest BIM platform in AEC, built without limits. And you're going to hear me keep saying this idea of without boundaries. One of the key things that we focus on at Qonic is what are the boundaries and the limitations that people face today in AEC. File size restrictions, hardware constraints, limitations for users, performance, all of those boundaries that influence users and designers and engineers and builders. And those boundaries are what restrain and constrain people's ability to deliver project quickly and efficiently. And so our laser focus is on exactly those things: cutting iteration cycles, keeping everything connected, optimizing workflows, and very much redefining how the AEC team can design, build, and deliver with speed, precision, and total freedom. So let me explain a little bit more about those kind of core principles. Firstly, fast data, instant answers. One of the absolute key principles of Qonic is its performance. Lightning fast performance to allow you to open information, explore, extract insights, and we're not just talking about one model, but every single model. And that incredible performance shouldn't require the most intense desktop computer costing thousands and thousands of pounds. In fact, one of the second principles is the ability to access anywhere at any time. And what we mean by that is you can use a desktop computer, which has got superpower computer performance, or opening it in a web browser. And that could be on a Mac, it could be on a PC, and that's even been extended to mobile devices like tablets and phones. Again, it's not necessarily just about the limitation of the hardware, but also the way in which people can interact with Qonic. And that brings me into this third aspect. We have no control mechanisms for the number of users. You shouldn't be curtailing people's ability to access information in your project because of some license model that forces you into restricting the number of people that can access information. So internally, you can invite your entire company to Qonic, and everybody, every stakeholder can engage with the project information, opening models, measuring, manipulating geometry and data. And through robust user permission controls, you can even extend that outside of your business as well. So if you have other stakeholders like clients, peers, constructors, consultants, etc., again, they can open a web browser, they can come into the project environment, they can spin things around, they can engage with things, and they can get the information they need quickly. We call that collaboration without limits. And the final piece here is about that zero disruption between all of the different tools that we're using. And so what we mean by that, again, is that you shouldn't be experiencing file format locks or chaos or headaches trying to move information between all of the different parts of delivering a project. So let me expand on that slightly more. I would say this is probably a representation of the average project delivery. There are projects in which you'll need to do modeling, and there may be some tools you're using to do that today. For some who simply just need to understand how the project is developing, you may also have different tools for viewing, faster, better tools without editing abilities that allow stakeholders to just quickly spin things around and have a look. There may be times in which you reach certain milestones in the project where you want to understand, how are we doing? What is the quality of the information we're producing? And so you may also utilize tools like quality assurance tools in order to understand whether from a data perspective or from a geometry perspective, things are working right. So again, you might have model QA tools or even design coordination tools to help you understand again that the geometry works. Now, design coordination happening in whichever product you choose to do that in can often mean that you're quite separated from all of these other parts. And the design or the development of the project is moving in parallel, but completely separate from the exercise that's happening around digital design and digital coordination. Equally, you may have separate tools to manage your 2D deliverables and develop your 2D deliverables, and also quantity takeoff, whether that's counting number of objects in your project, or, as is more common these days, quantifying the amount of material in your project, whether that be for life cycle carbon, operational carbon, developed from embodied carbon. Now, again, I kind of hinted at this already, but the idea is that every time you're moving between each one of these pieces and you're separating out into these different tools, sometimes from one software vendor, you're still having to interact with all of these different file format challenges, and moving data can often mean that you're losing information or losing geometry. And again, every time you're doing this, you're separating yourself from what else is happening in the project in terms of design development, decision making, and design iteration. So what about Qonic? How does that tackle this? Well, in fact, the way we look at Qonic is that Qonic tackles all of that functionality. And it does so fully synchronized, cutting the iterations between each of these translations between all of these different pieces and the inconsistencies between all of those different activities. So if you're really looking for that quick summary of what Qonic does, it's all of these aspects. Now, I could actively spend at least another hour or two talking about, okay, so how is Qonic useful for designers, constructors, maybe information managers, and maybe owner-occupiers? But I'll do that in a summary today, and then I'm going to hand straight over to my colleague to give you a live demo to really demonstrate all of this functionality. So let's talk from a designer perspective. Having a tool that allows you to open everything instantly and engage with the project is really useful. Designers who want to capture creative ideas using flexible modeling tools, quickly correct, fix, and enhance data across the models, all for those accurate data deliverables, performing digital coordination analysis on design and construction models, and really de-risking the construction process. All of which contained within Qonic. It's also worth me mentioning that whilst we do have incredibly flexible modeling tools, the underlying hierarchy within Qonic is IFC. So we are talking about a really structured hierarchy of the way that information works and is delivered both into and out from Qonic. Because of those lack of performance barriers, we're also talking about unlimited detail. You really can achieve the amount of information and geometry detail that you'd really be looking for in a project. So let's move into the world of construction. Qonic's incredibly valuable for constructors. Finally, they can aggregate and enhance all of the models and all of the data from their largest projects without having to drop a single element, yet still achieving incredible performance. Maybe for the first time ever, everything can be opened all at the same time, enabling those constructors and contractors to really understand exactly what's happening in their project. When they enhance those models with more accurate geometry and more accurate data, reports and quantities can be developed. And of course, all of those models, data, and reports are more accessible to every stakeholder from desktop through to the mobile app on site. For those who are often parachuted into projects to help coordinate information or with some information management responsibility, Qonic enables everyone to be engaged. No complex training required, no complex installations, license restrictions. Everyone in a project can open a tab in a web browser and be empowered to review, assess, report, and edit every data field, meaning the quality of information produced in your BIM projects is significantly higher. And finally, for those who own and occupy buildings, traditionally receiving a collection of rogue model formats that can't be opened and files at the end of a project can now be easily aggregated and viewed for everyone in one place across their devices. And that's going to enable owner-occupiers to understand how to better manage their spaces. Without restrictions, handover is simplified. The data can be used to better future plan and project changes to space, equipment, and maintenance. Okay, hopefully that's a really nice way to position Qonic to you guys. And I think the proof will be in a demonstration. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jacob, who will talk you through all of those aspects.
Yes, thanks, Aaron. Let me show some of the core principles of Qonic in action. First one being performance. So I've loaded in a model here. It's actually several models, it's different discipline models. So we've loaded in the architectural model, but also the structure, MEP, interior design, and so on. And as you can see, despite the high level of complexity of this model and the scale of this model, everything runs really smoothly. Let me actually show you an example of the complexity and scale that we can handle. So when I zoom in, you'll see I have these sprinkler heads loaded in as well. Let me zoom to one of them to show you the scale of it. So actually, let me do a measurement of this sprinkler so we can see it's currently about, so this sprinkler is about 2 centimeters across, maybe 5 centimeters in height. So it's a really small object and really detailed. We can handle any scale level from the smallest detail like the sprinkler to the size of a city. So when I zoom out, you'll see in this case I also have the entire city of London loaded in, and everything just remains really smooth. So size and complexity don't really matter with Qonic. You can just load in just about anything and it should work fine. Now, this may be the sort of performance you might expect from a viewer, although that's already kind of a stretch, to be honest. But Qonic is not a viewer, it's actually a modeling application. So I can just take this geometry and just start modifying it. So in this case, I'll just push-pull this bench here to make it a bit longer. I can also create new geometry. So maybe let's add a little support here as well. Now, obviously, you don't need to always load in the entire city. You can just change your scope to whatever you want it to be, depending on what you're working on. So, for example, let me hide some elements here to show you a bit more clearly what's all included in this project. Maybe just let's hide the architectural model and the interior model. Just to show you again that this project contains quite a lot of detail. In this case, all the MEP models and the structural model are loaded in as well. And again, despite the complexity of this model and the entire city here loaded in, everything just remains really smooth and really just a joy to handle. Now, let me limit my scope even further. Let me focus on a smaller part of this building to show you the next principle of Qonic, which is the modeling engine. So Qonic comes with advanced 3D modeling tools. These can go from generic tools, like for example, slicing existing objects. Maybe I want to slice this slab here. Let's slice it up to this level here, for instance. So now I have 2 separate slabs. So that's just very simple geometry editing, but there's also smarter tools. For example, let's say I copy a door. Obviously, the door opening will be copied with it. Let's say I move a wall. All the connections with the surrounding walls will remain connected. This kind of logic is built into Qonic at its core. Because obviously we're working with building systems, we know what these kinds of systems would behave like. We've also implemented some very specific tools for specific workflows. For instance, modifying materials of existing models. So in this case, this model came in as an IFC file. We also support Revit and Rhino, by the way. But I can take this IFC geometry and, for instance, change the material and the thickness of these walls. So let me replace these walls with another material. Let's say metal studs with a certain thickness. Let me maybe change its alignment here. So I can replace these walls with different material, different thickness. Maybe I want to add some layers. Maybe I want to add some insulation layers to some of the rooms. So let's say insulation layer of about 8 centimeters applied to the entire room. I can basically just click in a room and it will apply this layer to all of the different walls in this room. Maybe I also want to add some finishes. Again, just click where I want to apply it. And I'll just do this same process for the other walls here as well to make sure this entire portion of the model is properly detailed. I can even go a bit further and apply finishes to, for example, wall caps or these insides of these openings, for instance. It's actually a really flexible system of adding these details. So you're not restricted to preset combinations of materials or layers. You can have, for example, this wall set up here. Let me just set it in scope here. This wall along its length consists of 3 different combinations of materials. So here we have insulation and finishes. Here we only have finish on one side and we have finish on both sides. All these different combinations and options are all available. I mean, you're not limited. It's a really flexible system. Of course, at any point you can always find out its dimensions as well, so it's really easy to get feedback. If you want some accurate measurements of these objects you just added or modified, you can always use what we call the report panel. Basically allows you to generate a report based on anything that's in your model. In this case, I'm just getting a flat list of materials in this project or currently in scope, where I can say, okay, maybe for the plasterboard, I want to know the net area. Maybe for the insulation, I want to know the net volume. And for the metal studs, I maybe want to know the length, the entire length of these studs across these walls. I can always get visual feedback what a certain volume is or a certain quantity is. Maybe, let's say, the length of these studs apparently is measured along the middle of the height of these walls here. Now, I've been doing all of this still while in this context of the entire model, including London. So let me just zoom back out and get the rest of the model back in screen, just to again reiterate that you don't need to split your models into really small files, or you can actually work with the entire dataset loaded in. Okay, let me close this session here and go back to the dashboard. So here we have the dashboard, which is basically the place where you will manage your projects, your models, your access rights, and so on. And let me focus on the structural model and the plumbing model for a minute to show you the next concept or chapter I want to introduce, which is data enhancement. So you can use Qonic to take existing models and enhance the data in these models in several ways. So let me focus on the structural model for a second. And I'll use the browse panel to basically browse around my model a bit. And I've set up a browse panel configuration which shows me all of the steel objects in my model grouped by IFC class and by type. So for example, all of the beams in my model are currently selected, and I can see all of the different types of beams, so different I profiles, C profiles, and so on. I can quickly select them using the browse panel, but for now let me just select all of the beams in one go and open the inspect panel, which is basically a properties panel, or shows you all of the properties and attributes associated with the currently selected object. So I currently have around 4,400 products selected. They're all beams in this case. And I can see all of the properties of these 4,000 beams. So there's a whole bunch of properties and attributes. So things like where in the building are they, what kind of material are they, what type are they, but also typical IFC properties, like for example, whether or not something is load bearing or external. Maybe some properties that came in this case specifically from Revit. So it's a Revit imported model where we can find Revit properties as well loaded in. All of this data is in a model and can be adapted, can be changed, modified, can be deleted and added. So for example, let's say I want to know something about the fire rating of these beams, but currently there's no information about fire rating about these beams. So normally the fire rating is a property which is in the beam common property set, if you're familiar with the IFC schema. But in this case, I don't see it anywhere. There's nothing here about fire rating. So let me just add this property. I can either use existing IFC property sets and properties, such as, in this case, this beam common property set. Let me add the fire rating property. Or I can use custom properties. For example, let me add a manufacturer and steel class information to these beams as well. I've already set up this property set here in advance, but you can basically create your own entirely customizable property sets and reuse them across your projects in your organization. So let me add these properties, and I'll already also fill in the value. So maybe a manufacturer as well and a steel class, let's say S275. So I've now added this information to these 4,000 beams, where you can now see this fire rating indeed added, as well as these custom properties here. You can also use Qonic to enrich models and data in terms of classification data. So for instance, these 4,000 beams, let's say I'm using a certain classification system. Maybe I'm using the NRM system, which is the New Rules of Measurement, a British system, basically that governs how you measure something based on what type of object it is. So let's say I use the NRM system, and I know these steel beams. There's a code called steel frame. So this code here is the relevant one for me. I can just assign this code to these objects. And this will mean that when I later create a quantity takeoff in Qonic, the correct quantity or the correct measurement will be used based on this codification I added to these objects. Now in this case, you saw I had NRM and LSFB, which is a Dutch system of classification. These are currently libraries I have loaded into this project, but you can basically load in any type of library. So we support the most used libraries out of the box, like Uniclass and so on, Omniclass, Uniclass, NRM. But you can also create your own libraries. If you have your own custom classification system, you can bring that into Qonic and start applying it across your project. Now, another topic I want to discuss here in Qonic is the coordination workflows that we support within Qonic. This is fairly new, but basically we're working on different features, allowing you to coordinate different models from different disciplines, different stakeholders, and so on. For example, a typical coordination tool would be clash detection, where you'd want to check whether there are clashes between two different models or subsets of models. So let me group this by model here, and let's say I want to clash the plumbing model, which is basically all of this, with the structural model, which I already showed you before, all these beams and columns. So let me start the clash detection and clash. I'll just do simple clash everything of the plumbing model with everything of the structural model. So it's now doing this clash detection. It's actually happening in the background, so I can still interact with the model. Maybe I can already do a visual check and see that there's indeed already here at least an issue with this this pipe going through this beam. So maybe let me already resolve this by subtracting this volume from this beam. and maybe adding a clearance as well. Okay, so I've already fixed one issue that I just saw visually. Let me wait for so the results are just in. So I can see that there's actually around 414 different clashes between these two models. Let me check out what they are. So I can see indeed that there's some piping objects clashing with this beam here. So this will probably be something that the MEP engineer will have to resolve. Basically, every single clash is shown and visualized. So in the next version, we'll also be able to raise these clashes to issues, which can then be assigned to other people in the project. So basically allowing you to manage these clashes and assign them to the people who are relevant for this particular problem. Now, not only hard clashes can be checked, but also soft clashes. So for example, let me focus on some of these beams here. I see that there's already openings created for this beam, but maybe there's still some issues. Like for example, I think there's a clash here, and maybe the clearance isn't enough. So maybe let's check whether the clearance is enough for these 4 beams. So let me check for soft clashes, and let's say I need a clearance of about 3 centimeters. So let's apply that and wait for the results. Okay, and so we see here now we have indeed one overlap, which is this one here. And we have 2 issues where there's basically a soft clash. There's just not enough clearance between the pipe and the beam. So let me resolve that actually by moving these openings slightly. And I'll just move these openings down by 5 centimeters. And let's just run the same check again. See if everything works well now. Okay, so no clashes detected. So it seems like we've resolved these issues properly. And that's actually one of the great benefits of using Qonic for this coordination workflow, is that you can actually resolve the issues within Qonic itself. You don't need to send across issues to other platforms. There's no back and forth between different platforms. The entire idea is that everything can happen within this single platform to basically create a more streamlined workflow. Now, next topic I want to talk about is the collaboration with multiple stakeholders. So obviously, Qonic is a cloud platform, which means it allows for more fluent and more easy collaboration with different stakeholders within the project. And let me actually simulate a sort of multi-user environment. I have the same model open in 2 different environments, logged in as 2 different persons. So here on the left-hand side, I'm logged in as myself. And on the right-hand side, I have the same model open and I'm logged in as a different person who is part of the same project. So now let's assume this person here needs to make some changes to this model as well. So while I was making these changes to the structural model, adding these openings and so on, maybe he also had some other responsibilities in this model. For instance, let's say he has these foundation slabs here, and he needs to cut these slabs up into different parts because, well, you're not going to pour this entire slab into one single cast. You're going to use smaller sections, of course. So let me use the slice tool to basically slice these 2 slabs up into more manageable portions. Let's say 15 meters. like this. So basically he sliced these two slabs up into smaller sections. Let's assume this work is done now, and he wants to now basically make his work available for other people in the project. So what he needs to do is he needs to publish these changes. Basically, the idea in Qonic is there's instead of working in real time with the real-time changes all the time, it's a sort of asynchronous approach. What I mean by that is everyone works on their own version of the model until they're ready to commit or to publish their change to the main version of the model. So let me, on this side here as well, just do the same. So I have the same version history of the same model open in two different sessions. So on the one hand, again, I'm logged in as myself. On the right-hand side, I'm logged in as Martin. And let's say Martin publishes his changes. So he sliced the foundation slab. So he now published this change. What will happen now is basically Qonic will try to merge the change made by Martin together with the changes made by myself here, which was adding those openings in the structural beams and so on. So where possible, this merge will be done automatically. So you won't even notice it as a user. So where possible, all these changes will be done or will be merged automatically. However, there may be at some point a sync issue or a merge issue if two persons at the same time made changes that are not able to merge. So in that case, you will be notified as a user that there's a merge issue and that you need to resolve it manually for this particular issue. Okay, so the merge is done now. Looks like there's no issue, so I am able to publish my change here. Let me, so I resolved some clashes with the plumbing model. Let me publish this. So now if I would open this version, you should see actually both changes made by the two different persons. So there should be now an opening here indeed where I created this opening for the pipe to come through. And I should be able to see now that the slab is indeed split up into different sections. So it looks like both versions were merged correctly, which is of course what we want. Now, collaboration is not only about working on the same model with the same people, it's also about sharing models with people who don't even have necessarily technical knowledge or access to a tool like this. So it is always possible to create a public sharing key. Let's say for the structural model, I want to create a public sharing link. Let's say it's valid until the end of May. Copy this link. Basically, anyone can open this link. They don't even need a Qonic account. They can just open this link. It will open their browser, and it will have this model open. They're able to interact with it, so they can take measurements. They can find properties of entities. They can create a report out of the model as well. So basically, yeah, it's of course a read-only mode. So you're not able to change the model if you're not logged in, if you're not authenticated. But basically, it allows you to really easily share your models and your projects with other stakeholders, maybe a client, maybe a non-technical consultant, and so on. To really make this threshold to start using the models even lower, we also created a mobile app which runs on iOS and Android, both tablets and smartphones. Actually, let me show that. I have a tablet open here. Yeah, so I've opened the same project here on my tablet. Let me open the mechanical model here, or the HVAC model, and show you that it's basically the exact same interface, except for it's optimized for touchscreens, of course. And it allows you to, again, do these same things, like interacting with your model. Let's say I want to measure something. Maybe I want to know the dimensions of this object here. Maybe I want to know the length of some of these ducts. So the length of these 6 parts of duct is in total 6.9 feet, measured along the middle or the center line of these objects. Or maybe I want to create a full-on report based on what's in the model here. So let's open the report panel here. And so currently I have everything grouped by system type, which is a mechanical property, the type of system that these mechanical objects belong to. And then again, also grouped by, in this case, IFC class. So I can see for this upper system type, we have around 1,700 meters worth of length of duct segment, 840 duct fittings, and so on. If I want to know what something, what this actually refers to, I can always colorize this so I can easily see what those duct segments are, what those duct fittings are, and so on. So again, exact same interface, exact same user experience, just made available on different platforms. So you're not restricted to only using a super high-end machine. You can use your browser, desktop application, Mac, iOS, and Android. Now, a final topic I want to talk about is this reporting functionality. So I already showed it briefly in this tablet demo where I showed you a simple report of mechanical ducts. Let me open another project here to show this in a bit more detail. So I have this model open here of 2 apartment buildings. In this case, they came in as IFC, and I can use these models to quickly get quantity takeoffs from the model. So let's say I want to create a report just for the materials. So maybe I want to simply see all the materials and their associated quantities, which in this case looks a bit like this. Note that all of these quantities are calculated from the model, from the geometry in the model. It's not based on base quantities in the IFC file or Revit quantities. It's all based on actual geometry that we see. So let's say I want to know the total net area of the different insulation types. Maybe the net area of plaster or the volume of concrete. All of these values that you see here are based on the actual geometry. Again, if I want to see what a certain quantity refers to, I can always create a color override or get some visual feedback to really easily see this is the actual plaster objects that are being used for this calculation of 5,897 square meters. Now, when you're happy with your calculation, you can always create a report. So let me export this report to the dashboard. Let's call it a material list. Now these reports can be used not only for quantities of materials, but basically anything that's in your model. So let's do something completely different. Let's create a list of windows and doors. So I will apply a filter to only show me the windows and the doors. And let's group them by fire rating. And maybe let's also group them within this fire rating grouping. Let's also group them by, let's say, width. So this creates this list with subgroupings. So I know in total I have 315 doors with a fire rating F60 with a width of 800 millimeters. I can always, again, colorize them to get a quick visual feedback what something is. So these pink windows here are the ones here, and so on. So always quick visual feedback about what something is. And I can extend this list with more information. Maybe I want to add some properties like the acoustic rating or the manufacturer, which will add more columns to this report. Again, let me export this report. Or we can use existing codification information. Like in this model, there's already codes applied to the different objects in the model. These codes were based on NRM, I believe. So again, the new rules of measurement, where I have already applied the correct codes to the objects in my model. So for example, the lowest floor construction here, concrete frames, and so on. Now, the great thing about using this approach is that these measurement definitions, so what exactly should I measure for a certain type of object, is already defined in NRM or in the used codification system. So you don't need to manually adjust these measurement definitions. You can rely on the automation and the structure of this system. So again, let's export this report and call it NRM QTO. Let's go back to the dashboard, where I should now see these 3 reports I created added in my report list. Looks like I already had some old ones as well. Okay, let's show me the most recent one. So this material list I added here shows me basically the same exact information as before. So yeah, the net area of these installation objects and so on. But now in a list format, which can also be exported to CSV if necessary. Same goes for the door and windows list and so on. There's always a live link between this report and the model, so you can always go back to, for example, if I want to know what are these windows with this F60 fire rating and width of 1800, I can always click this button here to open this model with these objects selected, again, to get quick feedback about what something is in this list. There's plenty more to show, but I think this already gives you a good idea of what is currently in the product and the direction that we're headed. So thank you for watching, and let me give the word now back to Aaron.
Thanks you very much, Jacob, for the live demo. Good to see all of that firsthand and without smoke and mirrors of kind of sped up videos or anything like that. I'm sure our audience will appreciate the kind of interaction. Just before I jump into a couple of summary slides, we live are about a minute ahead of what is being shown on LinkedIn. So really, just to give you a heads up, I'm about to go and answer all of your questions. If you have a question, write it now so that we can see it in about a minute's time when we catch up with each other. So really, for anyone that did join the webinar during the live demo there, I would recommend you just rewatch the beginning piece. It's a summary of basically Qonic as a company, what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do, and also effectively where the product is heading beyond what you've obviously just seen in the demo as well. So in summary, as you've just seen firsthand, with hyper-fast performance, you'll be spending less time waiting. Both you and your colleagues become significantly more productive, no longer waiting 10+ minutes every single time you want to open a file. As you saw Jacob open and closing models almost instantly. With access to cloud and mobility and being able to interact with all of this data from anywhere and any device, you'll be able to get answers faster. If you or one of your colleagues has a quick query about the project, you'll be able to get that answer faster and move the project along. With no design tool conversions, no data loss, no challenges with file formats, you'll be working much smarter, with less reliance on third-party plugins, consultants, or tools, or just simply getting stuck when things don't work. By being able to quickly enhance the geometry and also the data, you'll have higher quality models. With that more detail and accuracy, both your models, drawings, reports are substantially more accurate and relevant. You'll be delivering much greater accuracy and providing much greater confidence to the people you're working with. With all of that cross-workflow functionality being delivered in Qonic, you'll no longer necessarily need to be using all of those fragmented tools, maybe even paying for all of those, and so you'll be getting much better value and saving money. And so, whilst we're not necessarily here to close any sales agreement with the people watching, I did want to touch on cost for a second, because there's someone who used to manage millions of pounds worth of budget within an architectural practice on software. I really do think this is an important feature of how to position Qonic. So very first point to say is that you can currently use Qonic for free. Both one of the models you just saw Jacob presenting there, Qonic Towers, as a sample model to be able to spin around and effectively replicate 99% of the functionality you've just seen from Jacob. But as mentioned, the clash detection coming in a couple of weeks, and issue management. But you can also create a brand new project yourself. You can upload your models and you can start using everything you've just seen. At some point, and we hope, you'll want to add another project and another project and another project. And this is where effectively the licensing model for Qonic comes in. Now, I don't know, for those watching, I don't know what you're currently paying for all of the different tool sets that you use across your projects. But for a modeling tool, a clash detection and issue management tool, a quality assurance and data checking tool, for just simply the ability to enable every single person within your company and across your project to access Qonic and the data and the projects and the models within. All of that functionality being wrapped up under these price points that you see. I suspect that's probably significantly less than what you're currently paying with the more traditional vendors. Naturally, if anybody has any queries or questions about that, you can pop it in the live chat, or of course, you can contact one of the Qonic team afterwards with regards to things like enterprise agreements and so on. Okay, hopefully everybody's had a chance to pop some of the questions into the LinkedIn live chat. I'm just going to try and switch to those, and I'm just going to read them in reverse chronological order, which hopefully gives a couple of you still a chance to write something by the time I get there. Okay, so first question here from Julian: can you show some functions for the MEP elements? So Jacob shared some parts of that demo where he was showing the ability to interact with, edit and manipulate the information coming from the MEP equipment. So, sorry, it's just got to pop up. In terms of being able to interact with, manipulate, and modify MEP information, as you saw, that is possible. It is easy to adapt and adjust and manipulate both the geometry, but as you also saw from Jacob, you can also manipulate and edit the data as well. This is, of course, under the assumption you have full editing rights for that model. As you saw during Jacob's demos, you have the ability to bring in multiple models. There might not always be one that you have full editing access to. If there is a part of your question which is more about, are there tools within Qonic to create MEP systems? The answer at this time is no, not yet. Obviously, keep in touch with us, keep us keep following us. That may come in the future, but it's not in our imminent or current product offering. Okay. Let's head a little bit further down. So Laszlo asked, if you change the size of a pipe, does the hole in the beam change sizes too? So again, probably as you saw during Jacob's example of the soft clashes, you have the ability, assuming again you have full editing rights of both models, you have the ability to change both of those models in terms of the opening, discover the challenge, discover what's not working, and move forward. I'd also highlight that we're currently really working in an area called procedures within the Qonic platform, and that's effectively being able to replicate or automate some quick and repetitive changes across the project. So whilst not necessarily demonstrated, we'd hope to bring a lot of the functionality to be able to replicate changes that you're making in one place of the model and propagate them across the rest of the project. Can't say too much on that at the moment, but again, keep in touch with us. We'll be sharing some of that in the coming months. Can a pipe automatically cut a hole with a clearing for itself in the beam? That's, I think, maybe the same question. So from Peter, is there a bidirectional, I guess, link between Qonic and the Revit model for when issues are resolved in Qonic? Okay, so one of the things that maybe we can repeat is how do you get information into the Qonic platform, and also how do you get information out of the Qonic platform? So firstly, we are not interested in any kind of locking or controlling of the quality of your information going in and out to maybe prevent you from doing that. The key thing from Qonic's perspective is a fully open platform. So one of the first things to say is how do you bring information into Qonic? So one of the first ways to do that is by dragging the models into the project dashboard in Qonic. You can bring in models that are IFC files. We work, I guess, natively with that IFC information, which is good. And then you can bring IFC information out the other end at Qonic as well. And the idea is that you shouldn't notice a difference. There shouldn't be any exporting mechanism that is effectively kind of losing geometry or so on. In terms of, let's say, some of the more popular file formats like Revit, and as per your question, Peter, you can bring Revit information into Qonic, and you can currently do that in two ways. One is if you install the Qonic plugin to Revit, you can open the Revit model, you can visit the Qonic plugin, and you can press export, and it will push that project to Qonic. This is really good if you have extremely complicated projects that perhaps are, billions of polygons that are incredibly complicated, and it will churn through that pretty quickly. An alternative method is you can actually go to the Qonic dashboard and you can drag your Revit file into the Qonic dashboard. That file will then be uploaded, and effectively we'll use the Autodesk APIs to process in the same way that the plugin processes it on machine. We'll be processing that in the cloud, and that project will then be available to you shortly afterwards. In terms of then making changes in Qonic, so today you can edit and manipulate geometry and data. You can do things probably significantly faster in Qonic than you might have done in the original authoring application. Like you saw from Jacob, batch editing 10,000 file parameters in a second. Qonic's a real incredible product to improve and enhance the quality of geometry and information. So it makes sense that you would then maybe tackle some of those activities in Qonic. If you then needed to get a Revit model out the other end, maybe this is a project deliverable, or it enables you to do something else in your workflow. We, of course, support the ability for you to be able to export a Revit model. Now, I need to be careful how much I say about this because it's not currently live in the product, but there is an upcoming second method that we are currently working on at the moment, which is effectively to drag the model into the browser at the beginning, work in Qonic as has just been described, and those changes that you make in Qonic are pushed back to the original Revit model that you uploaded. And what that basically means is that when you take a Revit model out of Qonic, it will technically be the original model you uploaded with all the changes you made in Qonic. I think one thing I will say at this point, though, is we don't necessarily envisage a workflow in which you're co-utilizing Qonic and Revit at the same time. As you can probably imagine, that would be incredibly difficult to manage if you had 5 or 10 people working in a Revit file, 5 or 10 people working in Qonic. Those two things aren't going to synchronize perfectly with each other. So just maybe to highlight, Peter, we don't necessarily support or envisage a workflow where you'd be in both of those platforms at the same time. Okay, Kevin, over to your question. So loving the Git approach, will you be able to apply this at an element level in the instance of a merge conflict? So I'm going to ask Jacob maybe to expand on this a little bit in a second, but one of the ways in which we are managing this is through the ability to understand the differences and the diffs between a previous and a current version. One of the things that we're looking at the moment is how we graphically represent that as obvious as possible to the user, almost like a traffic lighting system to say, these objects have been deleted, these objects have been modified, these objects have been moved, these objects have been added. Jacob, do you want to talk specifically about how we apply at an element level this idea of kind of conflicts?
Yeah. Exactly. So actually, currently in the project, it's already on an element level in the case of a merge conflict. So basically, if there is a merge conflict, if two people made changes that are not compatible with each other, you will see each of those conflicts as a separate issue, let's call it, or a separate conflict that you can, per conflict, choose which one to choose, which one to keep, basically. In terms of actual model diffing, or the history of objects along the course of the project. We do keep this history, but there is no way at this time in the user interface to, for example, select a wall and say, show me the entire history of this specific wall. We do have it in the backend, but there's no user interface for it yet. But that is something that we can implement, technically should be possible if the question would arise to support that.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. Last call, by the way, if anyone has any more questions, we're again about 30 seconds to a minute ahead, so we may not see them if you save them right to the last moment. Another question from Laszlo. So can you save the current report settings so that you can view and export the results again later, or do you have to set the report up again at that time? Jacob, do you want to cover that?
Yeah. So currently the grouping and filtering rules are, you can save them as a sort of template. So you can reuse those. Other things like those property column you add, or the color overrides and the measurements definitions, are currently not yet saved in this template, but that's something that we're working on. So you'll be able to basically save an entire template with all the information in it and reuse them across your projects.
Yeah, and maybe to share just the sort of the trajectory that we're thinking about, and it's not just for reports, but it's in other places in Qonic as well, is the ability to save things, not just you as a user, so that it's accessible to you again next time, but at a project level, so that other people working on this project have access to the same sort of saved configurations, but then also at an organizational level. So across multiple projects, you'll have the ability to save and store these configurations. So something we're working on across the board in loads of different areas in Qonic, and as Jacob's just said, some of that already available to you as well. Okay. Another question from Lazo. Is the roadmap public and where can we view it? We don't currently have a definitive roadmap listed anywhere. However, we are an incredibly open company, and because we're not publicly traded, we don't have to offer this safe harbor statement about not making investment decisions based on how our roadmap might change. So myself and Jacob, were just recently at the Building Smart International Summit in Singapore. To that audience, we did share our upcoming roadmap. If you specifically are interested, or anybody watching this back wants to know a little bit more about kind of some of the things that we're working on in the coming months, absolutely feel free to reach out. We'll share some of that with you. I think ultimately we're extremely keen to understand how those features that we're working on are best implemented and best delivered to users. And so if anybody has any specific topics that they would really like to understand, both how we tackle today, but also how we might deliver out in the future, we'd love to partner with these people and understand exactly how we can best do that. We have an intelligent group of people that have worked in industry previously and built AAC software previously, but that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't always keep in contact with those that are using tools on a daily basis. So again, feel free to reach out to us. We can kind of share a little bit about what we're working on. There's also some upcoming sessions that we've got, which is maybe a good plug for that. So for those of you based in Europe, specifically perhaps Belgium, we have a Qonic Talks in-person presentation where we may again be able to share a little bit more about what's coming in that kind of slightly more closed session. That's on the 15th of May. You can find details online about that. And I think I've got a link on screen in a second where we can share that with you. We'll also post a link in the chat. We've also got our intention across the year ahead to also be presenting at a series of different events as well. So pretty much next week, we'll be at Built Europe in Hague. So again, if you're attending that in person, feel free to kind of say hello to us. We can, again, maybe share some roadmap information on specific topics you might be interested in. And also we'll be sharing some incredibly exciting news at Next Dev and Next Build, the AC Magazine event here in London. I can't necessarily share too much about that, but what I can maybe introduce is the topic and some areas that we're extremely excited to share around automated drawings. One thing we couldn't show you in the live demo today is how Qonic is intending to tackle the development of live drawings. That's about as much as I can say before someone jumps into the call and mutes me. But again, keep following us, keep up to date with the things that we're going to be posting real soon on that topic specifically. Okay, I'll do one last refresh of the questions just in case anything else has kind of come through as I was talking. Again, we're about 30 seconds ahead, so apologies if you're now frantically writing a question. We might not be able to see it, unfortunately. Okay, so just before we close out the webinar, just a couple of notes in terms of next steps that you may wish to take. First and foremost, you can get started for free at qonic.com. That will enable you to create a brand new project for free. It doesn't require you to enter any credit card details whatsoever. You can start uploading one of your projects. And there's also a sample project there available to you, so you can test out all the features and functionality that Jacob just shown. One thing I will definitely say is by uploading one of your own models, you'll get a first-hand experience of the difference in performance and all of those boundaries and limitations that you expect in your traditional tools you use today, and how those are effectively addressed and disappear when using in Qonic. It's definitely how I started my Qonic journey, by uploading one of the most complicated, difficult, tricky projects I had, and realized how easy Qonic deals with those. For anybody that may be interested in more of a kind of a formal and dedicated proof of concept process, this is effectively an offer that we have within Qonic, and we're working through with many customers across Europe on right now. Across a more dedicated and longer period of time, a partnership between us and you to make sure what your objectives are, what the problems you are trying to solve, how Qonic may address some of those, and we hope all of those, as well as different training and onboarding for all the different teams that may be using it through that process as well. And again, just one final plug. If you're in Ghent on the 15th of May, you'll be able to join us in person. We have the entire company there, and everybody will be available to share some of the updates and some of the things that maybe we're not quite yet able to post online. Thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate taking the time to A, watch us live, or B, if you're watching on repeat. Again, you can follow us across all of our platforms. Feel free to get in touch. Feel free to share queries and questions. We're always willing to partner with people and answer those. Thanks very much.
Thank you.